everyone. At the very first inaugural UROBOROS Bites session, we are really super happy to have you here, that you made time in the late evening, or depending which time zone you are at, for us today. And I would like to especially welcome our two guest speakers today, the experienced designer and design researcher Juli Sikorska and designer and design researcher Stëfan Schäfer, who are going to share some bits of their work today with us. But before we give the floor to Juli and Stëfan, let me just briefly introduce the scope of the UROBOROS Bites program that we are officially kickstarting today. So the Bites are planned as a long-term series of online experimental design events combined with a physical exhibition in the DOX Center for Contemporary Art in Prague. We plan to have several Bites events happening throughout a year, starting today and continuing in the years to come, hopefully. And our main goal really with this series is to extend the annual Uroboros Festival into a more continuous and rich platform for experimental design and research that can reach diverse audiences. So I was thinking that for those of you who are not familiar with the Uroboros Festival just yet, I will just say a few words quickly about the festival now, so you have a full picture of what is actually happening here. So yeah, the Uroboros Festival of Experimental Design and Research was initiated in 2019 as an open space for collective explorations of what and how we can design in the current times of socio-ecological crises to support positive change. The idea for the festival and for its main theme, Designing in Troubling Times, as we call it, was brought together by 4 design researchers / curators / producers, Michal Kučerák and Lenka Hámošová, who are today here with us, Lukáš Pilka, and myself, Markéta Dolejšová. So the 4 of us, we were spending quite a lot of time with conversations about both the existing and the potential role of socially oriented design in the current context of the various crises, manifested, for instance, as climate change and biodiversity loss, or the continuing rising wealth disparities and structural inequalities, algorithmic injustice, etc. And since we are, of course, not the only designers in the world who are concerned with these issues, and with the question of what design can do in these troubling times that we are facing today, we decided to organize the first UROBOROS Festival. And from the very beginning, the festival was envisioned as a very collaborative space that is open to inputs by designers and other creative authors from all walks of life. And that also puts a strong emphasis on the active engagement of the festival audience. And our aim with this really has been to offer a stimulating, friendly, experimental design space that would be accessible to as many people as possible, and include them in joint co-creative reflections on what is happening in the world today, and also as equal stakeholders in the shared futures to come. And the first Uroboros 2020 festival happened just this May in the form of a 4-day-long online event. Our original plan was actually to organize the festival live, fully live in the DOX Center in Prague. But we eventually had to reimagine absolutely everything and rethink the whole program and adapt it to the emerging conditions of the COVID-19 pandemics. So after all, it really happened fully online, everything, the full program. So just to give you some idea, this is how our space, our exhibition and gallery space actually looked like for the festival. This is from DOX. I actually think that we might have been one of the very first festivals to do this and move fully into an online space in the context of this pandemic, I mean. So it was quite an unexpected start for the whole festival series, but it was also quite a pertinent one, given that our main focus is on the explorations of what design can do in these troubling times and what does it mean to be designing in troubling times. So we were really put in a situation where we are not only theoretically reflecting, but actually we were being in the middle, right in the middle of the troubling situation. In any case, the 2020 festival was eventually attended by more than 600 people, which we didn't quite expect. given that it originally was planned as a local event in Prague. So we eventually reached much larger and much more geographically and culturally diverse audience all around the world. The festival program involved 32 design events, including workshops, performances, LARPs, live coding parties, experimental cooking sessions, and all kinds of other co-creative experiments that were initiated and organized by 45 authors from across the world, including, for instance, Juli's workshop titled Urban Heat Island Living, Designing Sustainable Urban Futures. So we might hear something on the similar theme today, I suspect. And we also had Stëfan at the festival and his workshop titled Everything Dies, though it has never been alive. So we will probably talk a little bit more about it today as well. And we had many more other events that you can actually find the full documentation on our website, uroboros.design. If you are interested, there are also all the video recordings, are actually the live streams saved as recordings of all the events that you can go through retrospectively. But I would also like to mention another aspect of the festival that for us as the festival organizers, curators, but also design researchers ourselves, Uroboros is more than just public engagement event, but we also treat it as a research event, which means that our aim is really to observe and together with the festival artists, explore what knowledge can the experimental work that we do help to reveal with regards to the festival theme and the troubling conditions that we are living in. And by doing this, we hope to contribute to the existing and much larger body of research that is trying to demonstrate the, we would say, often undervalued potential of creative experimental practices in supporting critical reflections on urgent socio-ecological challenges. So ultimately, our goal is to offer Uroboros as a long-term experimental design and research platform that reaches beyond the scope of an annual festival, so something that is a little bit larger in time and space, and that enables interested authors to come together, share their knowledge, and reflect together, imagine together about what design can do. Which also brings us back to this UROBOROS Bites event. So the UROBOROS Bites program, as I said, is envisioned as a long-term initiative. It is one of those attempts to frame Uroboros as a long-term network and platform. The theme Designing in Troubling Times stays in the focus of the Bite series that invites creative authors, designers, researchers, practitioners as well, but this time for these shorter one-off events such as today instead of for the one festival. So it's a little bit more flexible, I would say. But this is now all from me for the intro, and I think Michal would like to say a little bit more about docs and database and the physical context of Bites. Should I stop sharing? Do you want to? Yeah. A bit. Yep.
Thanks, Michal, but that was not the plan, actually.
I think we can, not to run out of time, we can give the floor to Juli, who is supposed to be the first presenter today. So Juli, the floor is yours.
Thank you. That definitely works for me. Yeah, my name is Juli. I'm a design researcher and experienced designer, and I'm currently in Munich. And what I would like to have a little bit of a conversation with you all over the next half hour. And so for this, I would like to ask you to set your view to gallery mode so that you can see all of our windows. It should be on top in your top right corner, I believe, the view icon. And if you could also all turn on your cameras, that would be really cool. I understand if you don't want to show something, that's also right. But if you want to, that would be great. If you could also add your name and where you're currently located into your Zoom name, that would be also very cool. And my headphones will be falling out, as always. Awesome. Thank you all so much already. Like I said, I would like to have a little bit more of a conversation with you and explore what it could be like to live in the middle of a heat wave and in the middle of an urban heat island. In the future, also what it already means now. But before I do this, I would like to do a little exercise with you. For this, I will also turn off this camera, and you should be able to see me under home office. So it should still be there. All right, very cool. So I would like to take you through a quick 3-minute exercise where we explore our space, starting from ourselves and looking into the wider space that we're in. And this will be a little focus exercise. So I hope that everybody has taken a seat, or I'd like you to take a seat, preferably at a space where you usually work. If you work from home, that would be the ideal space. If that's a different space, maybe you can take a seat at a chair, a desk, whatever you like. And I see that some people are rearranging, so I'll just give you a second to do that. Okay, let's hope that everyone's comfy. Cool. So now start with you. What does it feel like to be you right now? How does your body feel? Are you cold? Are you warm? Are you hungry? Are you just full because you just ate? Are you tired? Are you energized? Do you hear anything right now? How do you feel right now? Are you relaxed? Are you stressed? Are you alone? Are you with others? Are you together alone with them? Now look around you. Look around your space. What's directly around you, let's say within an arm's length? Are you sitting on a chair? Is it a wooden chair? Is it comfy? Is it a couch? Are you at a table? What kind of table is it? Is it a desk? Is it a coffee table? What's on it? Is there a beverage, a bottle? What else? Pen, paper, maybe a journal. Now look further around you. Scan the space. What else is in the room that you're in? What kind of furniture is there? What other objects? Are there any plants? Any instruments, maybe a box of wires, cords? Can you hear any sounds? Do you know if there are any people above you or below you? And can you hear them too? Now think about looking outside. What would you see out your window? Is it other buildings? Do you see any trees? Is it buildings and trees together? Is there a street? And if so, do you see any cars, bikes, people? What sounds do you hear coming from the outside? If you can look outside, if there are people, what are those people doing? Do any of them sit on the street? Do they chat? If you see buildings, what are those? Are they shops? Are they apartments? If you can peek into somebody's window, maybe it's already dark where you're at too. If you can look into somebody's window, what do you see going on there? What's happening? Now, back to yourself in your space. What does it feel like to be you in your space right now? And also, as a little experiment, can you all turn on your microphones so we can hear our spaces? All right, thank you so much. You can also turn off your microphones if there's noise coming in from where you're at. Now also think about, is this the same space that you were in 6 years ago? Where were you then in 2014? How was it different? What did your desk look like, the room that you were in? What was outside your window back then? What do you think will happen in the next 6 years by 2026? So I got a little peek into that. I'm here at this desk, which is a home office workstation. It could be in Prague, it could be anywhere in Europe, really. And it seems to belong to a person named Lisa. So it's actually not my space. It seems to belong to a person named Lisa based on this journal that I found. And judging from, or actually I'll show you a little bit in a second. But in general, what I do is that I'm interested in exploring futures, which sometimes feels a little bit like archaeology, what's going to happen in the future. Or sometimes it feels like solving puzzles. And so what I'd like us to do right now is to together try to figure out what might have happened in Lisa's life. And for this, I'll read you a little bit from the journal that I found. Wednesday, August 3rd, 2026. I am melting. Sorry about that. I am melting. It is hot as fuck. 39 degrees in the shade, but it feels like 45 when you're where I'm at, trapped in a sea of asphalt. I didn't think about this when I wanted to live downtown, did I? Well, I shouldn't complain. Central Prague is still pretty great. Lots of parks, trees, and other greenery nearby, and much better than the merciless heat waves in London for sure, on top of the shitty weather rest of the year. Thursday, August 4th, 2026. I remember my last time at a grocery store as if it was yesterday. Walking by the cold section of beverages right by the door, ready to quickly grab a cold beer and check out. Walking forwards to the dairy aisle and meat aisle, passing by the smoked cheese, the feta, and the halloumi. How I wish I could gently move my fingers over the plastic packaging again, just like I did yesterday. Friday, August 5th, 2026. My skin got really dry. The heat and the air from the fan are making my skin dry, and hydrating it with coffee is not a thing. I tried. When I go outside, it's really humid, and so my hair gets super frizzy and my skin gets greasy like a 13-year-old's. It's been 3 days of super extreme heat. I think I'll spend the evening watching Netflix on my couch with cottage cheese dripping from my face while I stuff my face with pizza. That sounds like a great Friday night. Saturday, August 6th, 2026. And there are multiple entries here. It's Saturday, and I woke up at 8 a.m. already because it's so hot again. The sun is pounding through my south-facing windows. Note to self, if you buy something as special as heat-reflecting curtain, put it up. It doesn't help much when it leans on a chair. Note to self number 2. I also bought socks for better blood circulation in the heat. It was supposed to be good for you, and I probably need to wear them for them to work. The curtain is up. I'm proud of myself. I even read the instructions and put the silver side facing out, not inside, which would have heated it, not cooled. It's darker, and it nourishes my soul right now. I was thinking about going mushroom foraging tomorrow, but I'm not sure if that's still happening. Marta really doesn't want to risk her thrombosis, and I get it. My happy compression socks that I got for this look really great on me, though, but putting them on was quite a pain. Why did I move downtown again? It's 42 degrees and now at 6 p.m. The curtains make it dark and it's still really hot. I realized I didn't read the instructions thoroughly enough. There was a gap between the window and the curtain where the sun heated up the air, and with the plant standing there, the space turned into a finished sauna. Fix the curtain with a bit of duct tape and a great load of frustration. There is no air in between now, and I honestly just want this day to end so I can open the window at night and go to sleep. I might take a bath. I took a bath. 20 degrees only cool you down for so long. My rubber ducks are in the dishwasher, so that was a short pleasure. Maybe I should talk to a human today. It's Saturday night after all. I would say that this explains a lot about what I found here in the space. The curtain behind me, the water bottle, the socks right here. That's all already wondering about the compression socks. And the plant that is slightly dying, probably also from the heat. Now, I told you that I am interested in exploring futures, and for this, I'm also a lot of times really interested in exploring past experiences because they actually might have a lot in common. As we say, the future is already here, it's just not equally distributed. So, what I would like to do with you now is I would like to hear from you about a time that was so hot that you did something differently, you changed your plans, you did something in a different way that you would do it usually. And I would like you to share it here in the chat, so you can open the chat window now and think of one specific time that it was so hot that you couldn't do the things you normally do. How did you do them differently? Did you do something more or less? What did you see? And what did it feel like? Think of this specific moment and share it in the chat. 1 to 2 sentences are absolutely enough, and send it to everyone in the chat. And I'll give you 2 minutes for that. I see the first one from Lucas. Very nice. I'll give you a few more seconds to add if there's anything you'd like to add. Awesome. I see a new one from Joachim, Lenka, Stëfan, Martina, and Tajana. Awesome. Very, very cool. Oh, I see more. Marketa, Alex, and Katrina. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. Would someone want to share their experience? So turn on your microphone and just tell us a little bit, really just a sentence or two. Volunteer. And you can just turn on your microphone and speak.
I just wrote an example of this one summer in Baltimore. I visited a friend and we had a tiny air conditioner, and it was this big plastic bag that we sort of cut a hole in the bottom, so it was this funnel. And I also remember a lot of sitting around and not doing much for that whole weekend for the same reason.
Cool. Thank you. Anybody else?
I remember, wait, I can turn on my camera. Sorry, I'm eating. Yeah, like in this summer, when it got really warm, I think it was also when we had all been inside for quite some time. So I live in The Hague, so there's a beach, and it was really nice to just decide not to go to the studio and instead go to the beach.
Cool. Any other experiences? Or any follow-ups, like for example, Lucas, so what did you do at the beach, or what did you skip? What did you have to do after to make up?
I'm not sure anymore. Like, I mean, I guess I would have just like moved what I had to do to the next day. But I mean, we would just like sit at the beach for like 6 hours, get like a little bit drunk, play football in a small group, you know, and just kind of, I mean, I think it was the moment when also people just started going outside again. It was just really nice to not be confined to your house.
Okay. Any other volunteers to share? Maybe something that didn't go as well, so something that messed up your plans.
I can share my sort of surprise or even a shock when I had this experience with heatwave. It was when I came back from Singapore, actually, back to Czech Republic. And I absolutely didn't expect that. I was thinking that I'm coming back, you know, to the climate that is much more friendly to the everyday life without air conditioning. And it turned out that it's really not like that. But it actually kind of scared me at some point, because the whole realization of the whole global warming and climate change suddenly fell on me. Since Czech Republic, as you know, normally not so hot climate, is not so much, let's say, stocked on air conditioners or fans. So they were actually like, you know, it was a big problem that there were not enough of these cooling devices available in the store. So people were complaining, and I just felt like, yeah, that's bad, it's coming.
Thank you for sharing. I also see some really cool ones in the chat. I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll just read out. So for example, I saw Lenka talking about an Uber ride that she had to get home during the heatwave in Amsterdam because of the AC in it. Never had to do that in 6 years living there. It was the most expensive taxi ride, but totally worth it. That sounds very intense to me. I see Stëfan sharing summer 2017, 43 degrees on the hottest day. The temporary research expedition, only able to work in the morning and later afternoon, not able to work full time. Yeah, absolutely. Have definitely experienced that too. Instead of going to go into a cave, we went for ice cream. It's one of the more positive ones. Also, Marketa, I think it's a different one from the one that you shared. I sat in my living room and wanted to write, but it was so hot in electronics. Oh, okay. So it is exactly what you said. Also, Alex and Katrina, summer 2019, it was so hot and I was a bit drunk, so I slept naked when I normally wear PJs. I would say that's definitely understandable. Cool. All right. Thank you all for sharing these. I would like to ask you to, if you have it with you, take out your smartphone and pin this to a map. So I'm collecting these experiences on a map that I'll share with you in a second. And if you want to share yours with this would be great. I shared the link in the chat. It only works on a smartphone though. Otherwise, Google Maps does not let you collaborate on Google Maps. So you can also on your smartphone add the link bit.ly so hot that and join the group or join the list. And if you want to pin that location and add your description to it, that would be really awesome. And if it doesn't work, you can also send me a message in the chat. Is anybody having trouble and can't do it? So they would want to.
Yeah, I opened it on web and I don't see a way to add it, but maybe then I have to open up Google Maps after.
Let me know if it doesn't work.
So in the meantime, where people are adding their pins, Juli, can you tell us a little bit more how you came up with the story, with the design fiction story that you read from the diary?
Oh, with that one.
I'm just really curious about which one.
Yeah, that story is based on stories that I have, or signals that I've collected myself, based on what I have observed with heat, what I've researched about how heat affects people's lives, but also other living things' lives, say insects and the other inhabitants of the city. Basically, that was a very quick one. So I developed the character of Lisa, the person who would live in this apartment in Prague, and I tried to think what could her life look like, really looking at the very small and mundane things, how climate change is affecting our lives, and then wrote a little bit of design fiction, wrote some very short Twitter fiction stories to make that experience a little bit more tangible, more graspable, and really embedded into people's lives. We can also talk more about this in a sec. I'm assuming that
Sure.
people will be done with their adding their pins. So really now, already thank you all so much for adding this. I really appreciate this, and this way, this project that I'm working on can actually grow even bigger. So this is part also of this design research approach that Marketa was talking about at the beginning. So what I'm putting together a library of the ways that we cope with heat, ideally from our own experiences, possibly in extreme situations. And if you have more experiences or more examples of how you've been coping with heat, if you want to add them to the map, that would be absolutely fantastic. If you could also add a picture or anything that shows what this meant to you, even better. And what will happen with this, also, if you don't want the experience that you shared maybe in the chat, if you don't want it in there, let me know and I'll make sure to not work with this further. Other than that, this is part of a larger project that I'm working on called Urban Heat Island Living. So this conversation we're having here now, and also the installation at DOX and the one here around me, is part of this project in which I explore what climate change means to European cities, what it will mean in the future, and also what it already means now, the little things that we maybe don't pay that much attention to. And this is a co-created project in which I like to work with you all together on figuring out what it will mean for us. Just like the posters that Michał showed at the beginning, those were also inspired by the workshop that we ran at UROBOROS Festival earlier this year, where in the workshop we together explored different futures. We looked at small signals and explored what their consequences would be in the future, or also when those things become the norm. And we tried to imagine social movements or other social actions that would result out of it for sustainable cities, for cities that are adapting to rising temperatures and all the effects that come with them, and especially focusing on cities away from coasts, away from flatlands that are mostly already targeted in climate messaging. So this is really talking about the cities in Central Europe, away from the coasts. The posters are also available at DOX. So if you're there, you can grab one. You can put it up in Prague or in your city. You can also make one yourself. The workshop is still available on YouTube from the festival. And yeah, if you do make anything, or also just if you want to chat, let me know. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Juli Sikorska. I'll also share a link in a second, with the hashtag Urban Heat Island Living on Twitter. We're more active, and Instagram too. All right, thank you all so much. And yeah, more questions. And thanks for sharing this link, Marketa.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for the talk and the introduction, Juli. If anyone wants to ask a question right now, we have a little bit of time. We will have more time at the final discussion later, but if somebody has a burning question now, please go ahead. No, maybe people are saving it for later. But yeah, we can, since we are running a little bit behind time, maybe we can switch to Stëfan's presentation. And thank you again really very much, Juli, for the really nice presentation.
Thank you.
And then we can discuss all together later.
Maybe I will play the video now, Stëfan.
Yeah, let's start with the video that's now shown in the physical space, but as we are all not able to be there, we just watch it now. Gezellig, as we say in Dutch, cozy together.
everything dies. The closer something is to you, the more you relate to its death. My personification is outdated. I have not cared about age, profession, or social status. I have not cared about you being a human, an animal, a plant. As long as you have been alive, sooner or later I would invite you for a dance. I have been omnipresent in the realm of the living. My new omnipresence exceeds the realm of the living. I do not care if you have ever been alive. I will invite you for a dance. Why? You identify yourselves with objects. You see them as extensions of your bodies, of yourselves. The boundaries between yourselves and your objects are fading. They carry you around when operating well. Where will you end up when you rang the last bell? What you are, I have been. What I am, you will be. Once a haven, getting fatty, later ratty, then just petty. Now you cave in. Once they gathered for you everywhere. You took them to places. Now laying here for years, with open eyes and rotting gums. Sun, humidity, rain. Gnawing on your remains, now they gather for you here and nowhere else. They catch your heartbeat, dying mountain. They evaluate, examine, to conclude the unavoidable, the empty promise of immortality. I used to mow grass and grains, and now I shovel snow as last remains. New patterns I am fancying, however that turns. I keep on dancing.
I hope it had a good sound.
But in between a nice echo, so it's continuing immediately.
Yes. So the floor is yours, Stëfan.
Okay, cool. So I will, actually I thought I would introduce myself and then go towards the work, but no, I will do that, yeah. So I'm Stëfan, I'm a designer. In between I call myself designer, design researcher, but now I'm figuring out design research should happen within design, and now it felt a bit like it was more, you do design and you always do some research and call it design research. So now it's more getting into, it's more design that I think it's the term / researcher. I'm based in Amsterdam with my own studio. Do you guys hear me actually? It's fine, cool. Originally I'm German, but I moved to the Netherlands for my studies. So I did my bachelor's in graphic design. Continuing immediately. Sorry? What?
I think there was a weird echo.
Yeah, I hear something. Okay, from somewhere I hear myself. So I did my bachelor's in Arnhem in graphic design. Then after this, I studied at the Sandberg Institute, where I also know Lenka from, it's in Amsterdam. The master study also called design. And then it was called Think Tank for Visual Strategies, but I don't know, that was not in my time. It was just called design. It was really broad. And there's some socially engaged projects and autonomous projects. So from this, I built my own practice around self-initiated projects for the biggest part. I also teach at two universities, the HKU Utrecht and Amsterdamse Hogeschool voor de Kunsten. But it's a teacher study, so then it's design as a subject to get implemented more in an earlier curriculum at high schools and art schools. Maybe it's also good to talk actually the topic of death. I think this question might come later anyway, so I can just spoil it actually. I was working on a project a long time together with Dr. Emily West, and specialized in the end-of-life care. And we were researching and making work around the topic of digital death. So what kind of influence does the internet have and online environments on physical deaths? What are new ways of mourning and funerals? So we did that for quite a long time, I think 4 or 5 years. Then we had a publication with all research texts and work documentation. Then I stepped a bit away from death, but then it came back. But then more in a way that I'm interested in rituals and the power of commemorative culture. In combination to things that actually have never been alive. And it started with reading a book about the medieval allegory, The Dance of Death, which this movie is now a contemporary version, and the starting point that I want to develop it. So I don't know if everyone is familiar with the concept. I think the most famous one little woodcuts, where it's clear that it doesn't matter if you're rich, what kind of gender, age, death is just randomly mowing the grass. So we still have also death was then represented as a person or a skeleton, or we still, I think everyone knows the reaper with the scythe. This comes more from the Bible, because humans were grains and they were just have been mown. But nowadays, last year, that's the last part of this of the short clip. Iceland held a funeral for a glacier declared dead, and it was the first glacier declared dead due to climate change and human influence on it. So what you saw on the left side was 1986, when it was still huge, and this tiny thing, 2019, was the leftover of it. Glaciologists call a glacier dead when it's not heavy and big enough, and when it stopped moving actually. And then now, so all objects around me. I mean, it's a total mess. So I'm glad we didn't have to show how the surrounding looks like here. I have to. Okay, it's so messy I can't even find that. But anyway, so the glacier was called Okjökull, and now it's called Ok because Jökull means glacier in Icelandic. So it's not the status of a Jökull anymore. So now it's just Ok. But then, following the news that I saw death and mourning language, it was used several times in relation to climate change. Scheveningenmeer, it's a lake in the Netherlands, was dying. That was a title. You had the glacier Pizzol in Switzerland, where people also organized a funeral march. And the abbreviation RIP they laid out in stone, where the glacier just was once. And now Greenland is also dying because of all the glaciers are melting. So I was fascinated with this, and this part of a bigger research, and now finishing a PhD proposal based on that. So the relationship between death, environment, anthropology, and design. And the connection between with design is then that I think there's an article by sociologist Lucius Burkhardt who said good design is invisible. So it's more about interpersonal relationships. Also, a term now is that's just brand new. That's from a Dutch newspaper. Emotional design. So there's this idea that we relate to objects. I'm not an objectophile, but I can remember. I do remember. I still have some stuff that I see as memorials of certain things. So I got this toy that my mom bought me back. There's a little brother of Bob in the background. With my grandparents, I went a lot of to climb mountains. So we collected stones that became part of memorial pieces for me. But I like the idea of that we connect to objects, and then just it's really normal. But with death, you get more connected to things that are, of course, in close distance. If it's a person, if it's a pet, the further it's away, you don't feel connected to it. But still, you can have connections with your objects. So this little clip is the first draft for a contemporary version in which death is also not so happy, that the representation is really outdated to have it only on, great. Nice one. As a human representation. In the clip, there was a very short one that there's a need to at least a chimera, and this is pre-religious, pre-Renaissance dance of death, that it includes at least animals or at least some objects that merge into one thing. So what I'm interested in is the representation of death and how this can be updated into contemporary versions of a dance of death. And the film, it's a clip. It starts with an object that I think everyone, it's the closest to everyone literally, because we have it in our pockets. It's the phone. I think I never call my phone alive, but when it doesn't work, I hear it very often like, oh, my phone just died, or my phone is dead. So even here comes the language of death and commemorative culture back. The other example is the couch. It feels a bit random, but I had a couch here, and it was actually it became really shitty. So it became fatty and ready, and then it was just trash. So I just dissected it and threw it away, but wanted to make this nice this photo, which actually resembled more like a rib cage, but it's purely an object. And it's a bit further away than you can keep it in your pocket. So the third one is the aircraft. And the aircraft, I visited last year, an airplane graveyard based in the city of Bangkok. And you can actually, from what I got there is that it used to be planes, of course, but then they were just put there and had a new life as a, what is it, kind of a theme bar. I think you could just get drinks there and sit and have fun. And there was a bar, basically. But then it also got shut down, and then it was just laying around there. It's really in the middle of just outside of the center. Now it's a home for a family, so people live there. And if you want to visit it, you pay the family. It's actually not really official. It's always gated. It's just this huge field, and the people. I think it's depending on every day or every hour it changes the price as well. It's not really official, but they have a home there. So it's actually resurrected several times already, these planes. The next one is the mountain, and the mountain in this thing is called the Hochvogel. He's still quite alive, but he's slowly dying. So what people do there, they call it, I think it's the University of Munich who does the research there. The things you saw, the measurements and everything, the electronics. It will break apart, and the crack, so the big thing that you saw, it's the crack that's just growing faster and faster. I mean, it will happen anyway, they said, but it's accelerated by the permafrost is disappearing. So it's accelerated by climate change. And the clip I showed there was, I was there last year climbing the mountain, which, yeah, okay. It was the most stupid thing that I've ever done, because I went by myself with a lot of the camera, tripod, too many, really so much stuff. It's just not convenient. I was miscalculating time. I thought in 3 hours and there. Now it took 3 days to get there and back. I had to climb, and I never, I mean, I was going on mountains, but not really climbing, but with help of others, I could at least record something there. And it was quite impressive to see. It's a huge gap, and you can go up there only from one part still, because the other part is already too dangerous. They are afraid that it will just break down. What I find quite poetic and beautiful, though, is that the crack runs across over the border between Germany and Austria. So actually, it's breaking the border between two nation states, which I find is quite nice in a way. And the last part of the clip is Opjukul. So that's just last year they had a lot of images of that I showed in the clip, how it disappeared from 1986 to 2019. Officially, it was declared that in 2014 already, but last year they decided to have the funeral. So that's a bit the idea behind this clip, and why I like this idea of the dance of death is that oh, here's the note from that in the beginning, at least that's what this one guy says in the book, researching the medieval dance of death, is that it was not only socially valuable. I mean, it was still that you have a better life while you are alive and treat every person better and don't be mean. I mean, that's also quite a cliche, but I mean, okay, it's long ago. But what I also like, and this is then we are in the 10th in the year 1000. That it was also be aware of your surrounding and really be aware of, the German word is Kreatürlichkeit, and I don't know how to translate creaturalness. So it's just a tiny little piece on the planet, and you have to be really aware of your surrounding and treat it well. And it's not only, I think he describes it as, it's also used as a protection of human egoism. And I think in these times, there's this meme that you have, what is it? Ego as a pyramid with the human on top, and then next to it you have eco. There's a human is just somewhere in the part, and I think this interconnectivity is a really nice example from a very old version of the Dance of Death. So that's why I started. Okay, I want to make a contemporary version, and this was now a first start. See this opportunity to start this project, and it will just grow. Anything else? I think. What I find interesting as well is that emotions I already mentioned, but I think there's a thing when you try to make people aware of climate change and the consequences, that it's a lot of science and diagrams, and not only that a lot of them look shitty, you can maybe design them nicer, but also it's so not, you can't relate to it. So it's what I think is interesting, and this is an interview I read. 1 second. There was an exhibition last year in the Design Museum in Kerkrade in the Netherlands. There's an interview between, one of them is Kurt von Mensford from Next Nature, and they have a discussion just about this, that we need to get somehow to get people on an emotional level, but this is just really difficult. How could you do this? And I think for my part, because there's an interest in death and the representation, the power of commemorative culture and vocabulary. I think that this is my point to tackle, my aim to tackle this topic. Yeah, I've been interested in this all the time, and this is due to an uncle of mine. He used to have everything almost that's illegal when it's objects and animals, alive and dead. So he had them first alive, but really exotic animals that I don't know where he got them from. He is already dead. But I don't know, somehow he always gave me something that was related to death. It was a skull, it was a t-shirt with a skull. It was not even band shirts, but I think we had this little I don't know, paper thing that you can just order t-shirts from some kind of company. It's a lot of skulls on it, and I don't know why I always liked it, because I also like my uncle, and it was just filled with death and illegal. He even had a monkey in his living room. I mean, really a shitty aggressive beast. Later, I saw it on the wall because he was also stuffing them by himself. So a lot of snakes, a lot of spiders, this monkey, bats, and I don't know. So I think this is where I thought, yes, somehow there's a fascination, and death is not only represented as in form of a skull, but these things they're also already there. And it was his memorials because, I mean, not the monkey, but the snakes he liked, and then he created his own cabinet of curiosities in this way. The little clip also, it's the very first time that I tried to write something that would come close to poetry. Never done that before, but in this medieval, in this dance of death, you have it's a combination of text and image. So there's little poems there, and then you have one illustration there, and this combination makes it actually really nice. You have a performative part for people who couldn't read back then, that someone would really read it out loud. So now it's death themselves, so it's a bit an identity crisis because it's a bit beyond human. And I like this. It's an aesthetic, poetic, and didactic values implemented in this whole dance of death. So that's a nice thing, I think, to tackle the science part, of to tackle, but to use it also the science part to implement more on an emotional level to try to figure this out. I mean, it just started, so I'm still getting to get deeper into it, but this is a bit the whole idea behind this this clip and a bit my practice. And yeah, other questions? Oh no, wait. Memorial. So I gave this workshop, Everything Dies, and we make a memorial. So as I already mentioned, there are objects that I find are really as a memorial, even for a time that's not there anymore. And then I compare. This is Bob, my studio mascot. He also still knows Lenka, because we shared the studio once, so I just thought we need a skeleton, and then we had Bob, and now he's here. So one really nice object that I found back was, this is what I was wearing as a kid when I was climbing all the mountains. So this is the whole collections of mountains that this is just my name from a piece of cake once. But it has all these things on it. It's nice little memorials. I think it was a time span of 5, 6, maybe 7 years. After that, my grandfather, first he got an attack and then he died. So we couldn't do this anymore, but it's a very beautiful memorial, I think. Another thing that's why I think it's non-living objects. I mean, it's a really broad interpretation. But in the chat, I mentioned this research trip to Kalmykia. It's a republic in southwestern Russia. It was a research trip. There's projects still coming out, but I met some of the locals. We had a fascination for the same music genre called grindcore. I don't know if anyone knows it, but I love it. And actually, because it's not so many people living there, but he knew it, and we became good friends. And he used to be a football supporter for the club of Elista, which is the capital. But this football club also died because of financial reasons. They could not pay for it anymore. But he said, I want you to have this Uralan Elista scarf. So it's for me a nice memorial for the memory that I've been there and met him, but also it's a whole memorial for this football club, because it was their colors. Now they have, I don't know, they have a new name, but also new colors. But for this period, I think that's a really nice piece of a memorial. And as the last thing, so what Bob is wearing here is quite exactly a year ago, just after I heard about this Okyukul glacier, I made memorial shirts for it, because I like to do shirts. I did this a lot during my studies, screen print and everything. That's really nice. Plus, there is this book, Virtual Afterlife, Mourning the Dead in the 21st Century. And one really nice thing is that you have a lot of wearables. You also had them before, when you have these little hair pieces from Victorian age. But this new way is that, as I understood correctly, it has its roots in gang culture, with self-made memorial shirts. And then it spread out a bit more. They are mostly self-made. You have this really beautiful airbrush ones. Beginning of this year, you had Kobe Bryant memorial shirts. I think they were done and sold illegally, but they're really beautifully done and really carefully. So this is the one for Okyukul. It has an image and it has text like memorial shirts too. It's maybe a bit far away. Oh, heavy. Oh. Also, he lost his leg when I moved him earlier. That's really stupid. But yeah, so it's basically just that image, and where it really cuts the line is between when it used to be Ok and then Ok Glacier. That's the basically image, and that the shirt was done totally self-initiated without also any funding, and all profit went to Icelandic environment helping organization. It's still going when all are sold, and it will go. Yeah. And that's a bit really fragmented, all pieces that I cut and dissected today from a lot of texts and thoughts. Are there questions?
Yeah, thank you, Stëfan, for your bites.
UROBOROS Bites, yeah.
There are actually questions in the chat.
Oh, I had it off, yeah.
So, yeah, maybe I would start. Yeah, let me see. There is one nice question for both of you from Marketa. You want to read it out loud, or should I read it?
Yeah, I can say. There are other questions as well. So yeah, but we have enough time actually. Yeah, well, I have a question for both of you actually. I like when you speak now. I find it interesting that you are both addressing the themes related to the ecological crisis and the changing environmental conditions, which are like very complex, problematic issues on the planetary scale. But you both managed to make them feel very personal and very individual, if not even intimate, which I think is very powerful because it helps us understand them. But you're also both using very different approaches, methodological in terms of design research. So I'm really curious, how do you come, to those approaches? What drove you to doing what you're doing? What drove you to hiking in mountains and researching death and collecting memorials, or to observing urban heat waves and writing design fiction stories? So whoever wants to take the floor first.
I don't mind. Do you want to start, or I could go?
Go for it.
Okay, there's several questions. So the thing, it's a totally complex on planetary scale issue, the whole idea of the Anthropocene as well. I read a piece, an article by a historian who said, now it's also not only a crisis or something, it's really a multi-dimensional something that we can also not grab and not only try to solve it within with one discipline. It needs to be something that we cope with this complexity, and this includes not only in humanities, it was already a thing in geography. So I think art and design, there was a lot of artists are busy with this as well. So I thought this this disciplines, even with the design background, and with the design background from the, for example, I think Papanek was already, Victor Papanek was already mentioning it, that you need to, you know, first things first manifesto, don't do anything for the commercial shit, but also be aware of planetary issues. And I think this is one of the biggest that we have. I think he had it on different levels. I'm really not putting it in a nutshell. But Design for the Real World is his book. I mean, it's still a lot of human-centered, but it's also, you have an ecological aspect that you have to really take care of as a designer. Yesterday, I wrote one quote by a German designer that it's so bad that I forgot his name. But he said he did a lot for Braun. It's really bad at it. I forgot. But he said, actually, I did so many products and he made people happy, but I curse it to death that he was a designer, because you're producing so many weird things that are not necessary. And it sounds a bit like a cliche, but I think it's quite interesting to translate maybe these things, or human-centered design. This term, I think, is, I don't know, I'm not the biggest fan of it. So human uncentered design, I think it's a much nicer approach to connect to several fields, and to make at least something understand the complexity of this multidimensional thing called the Anthropocene, climate change, because it's huge. I mean, you cannot tackle the whole thing. I don't even know if there's one core for as a problem. Distinct perspectives. Death, I think a bit what I just had. This is really a powerful thing that I got from with early age. And the weird thing is, I mean, emotionally, I had some attachments. It was my favorite spoon. I think everyone had this. But when it was death of persons that were really close to me, I was not that emotional. So I don't even know what that is. But this I figure out now with things, maybe. And there was a third part. Yeah? Or do you want to go on maybe first?
Stëfan, I was wondering, are you a city person or a nature person?
Hard to distinguish. I mean, I really love. It's hard to say, because I mean, the mountain trip last year was so nice. Now I also just go more hiking, but we are in the Netherlands. The nature/culture thing is a bit one thing. A lot of things here are designed. Now I couldn't get further in this book because I just bought it. Bruno Latour, who said, okay, there's something about nature and culture, not to be distinct or totally, but there's nature/culture, and now I have to see what his real umbrella term of this is. Do I have to choose?
No. I think this is just something that I thought of immediately, that you would mention things like hiking and like going out and exploring nature, which is something that I have been forced to do as a kid. And I think even as an adult, I never started liking them like other people do. So I realized that, for example, I consider myself very strongly a city person. And now I also realize that maybe I should reframe my question, not to call it nature or city, because what I'm realizing, there's a lot of nature in the city. Mm-hmm. And I think this is something that I have been realizing over time, where everything that, like any kind of actions to get kids to engage more with climate change from an early age, or develop this appreciation for the environment and for nature, is always about go out, go hiking, find the beauty of it. Well, for me, it doesn't work. So I think in my work, I was primarily looking at things that I would personally enjoy to do. And because I just love big cities. So like right now, like with the pandemic going on, I'm also realizing that I don't know what to do with myself a lot of times, just because cities as I know them don't exist. Mm-hmm. And that also is a big personal struggle for me right now. But I think that a lot of this is also like why I started engaging with the topics that I started working with, like how does it affect our cities? What does it mean for the future of our cities? And I do believe, like you're saying, that nature and culture are not separate. So how can we find nature in cities? And Prague is actually one of the best examples for this that exists, because Prague and Vienna are the greenest cities in all of Europe. And so you have the most available green space per inhabitant, and also closest to walk to. And so that's actually, already doing super well, so to say. And so I think that you can find a lot of nature to cherish in cities already, but also we can definitely see how that is disappearing. I guess also dying. That would also be an interesting thing to look at.
Mm-hmm. The thing is that this mountain thing, it was purely for the research. I mean, I like to do it a bit more now, but I have to see. I enjoyed it as a kid actually a lot, and now I like to walk through nature. I do it actually every week with some artist friends, just walk and talk. But I think what a lot of people have when they talk about nature is that it's so romanticized as well. Okay, there's nothing in here, but actually I think even this is so complex because behind this you have, I think, park rangers, people who take care of the population of animals. It's just this romantic idea of this, yeah, this is totally free. So that's why I find it hard to answer if nature or city person. I mean, I grew up in a small city, but this is one, on the map in Germany, it's the west, it's called the Ruhr area, former industrial area. Even the greenest city was there, one of them, but it's a huge blob of cities. And one of the smaller ones is my hometown. It was totally polluted. There's the biggest mining area, I think, in Europe. It was there. And now in Amsterdam, it's also, it's not too big, but, but it's nice. So I think it's a bit both. But it's not that I think I have to go out to nature and be really romantic about it.
Maybe I would now switch to some of the other questions in the chat. I can see that, for instance, Lucas was asking the question. I think it was for Stëfan, right? For Stëfan. So maybe, Lucas, you can ask yourself if you're here still. Yeah. Yes, you are.
Yeah, Stëfan. So thanks for the presentation, and I'm not sure if I missed this because I had some internet issues. So there might also be parts of the presentation that I just didn't understand. But I was just curious about the form of the work that you showed us, because you showed us the video and then afterwards you gave the presentation. And for me, a lot of the things that you were saying in the presentation were not things that I would have gotten from the video, but somehow they made the video very interesting for me, much more than maybe, or it's just different. They contextualized the video differently. Let's put it like this. And I'm wondering, like, why you chose this form, like, because I don't know if, like, maybe in the show there is more info that is accessible or something like this, or yeah.
No, the idea is there is a little text indeed. The talk was more contextualizing the video, yes. And the short text at the expo, there's a short explanation. It's a Dance of Death contemporary version. I think it's also in the Facebook event. So that's actually the basic information that you need, I think. Why it's the video form? So the setting was there that you can do anything, but there is a table and a screen, a computer, and then you can do some work, and then there might be some physical extra thing. It could even have been a collection of websites or research on how to show it. But I like this idea of this little snippets playing with the. I mean, I don't know if anyone saw this, but it's a really slow-going anti-Instagram story things. That then here it starts and there it ends. So the level of time, the aspect of time in having this short clip is something that's already another level than having print or something that's really totally static. And then it was just, I thought, okay, then I experiment and can see how this can be a little, it's actually 3 parts. So it's the beginning when everything is explained. The printed stuff is the transcript also of the video that's hanging on the photo, so a big, on the hanging there above. And I think why the talk gave more information is that I also then bring myself more into the context. And as I said, this is a starting point for something that will develop. And this is then was the first attempt to start this Dance of Death in this way. Is that a bit?
When we're talking already about the form of your presentation, there is also another question in the chat from Jochem.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if he wants to say it on his own. Yeah? You need to turn on your mic.
Yeah. I think you already answered it, but I was really curious about like the illustrations that we were seeing in the stone, like the carvings.
Mm-hmm.
I was really curious what they meant for you and why you chose to use them in the video.
In the beginning ones, so the photos were just in things instead of this is the old school dance of death actually. So the three next to each other are from Hans Holbein the Jüngere from the beginning 16th century, and this is the most famous ones. It's woodcuts. Why these three? There was a bit to bring a bit diversity. It's in age, and one is a profession, and the other one is more a social status. The engravements flat on stone, it looked not so good. So the engraving was just making it more into one form. It's a pure small aesthetical choice. And the other one is also really famous Dance of Death motif. I thought if there's something, because this is more this introduction already without giving too much pure information, that it is more in a way, okay, if this image and this is what Death had till now and where he's going to. And Hans Holbein, his wood paintings are actually, in this book about the medieval Dance of Death, it was a turning point with the Renaissance. He said that their death became so human-centered, and it was only about the idea that death is omnipresent, but it was actually a bit the death of the Dance of Death, because it was a completely different story. So all poetry was actually gone. The aesthetic parts it messed a lot of its magic actually. That was he saying. So that's why I thought if there's something that there should be an image that someone can maybe relate to, then it's from this one, because that's one of the most famous as well. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And yeah, I have a question to Julie about, like, when we're already talking about these forms, then I also want to ask you, why do you choose oh, my camera is again blurring. Why do you choose fiction stories to communicate your research and your topic?
Yeah.
And how do you have experience with people responding to it?
What I am trying to achieve with the project is to help people disconnect from the intellectual side of climate change and really feel it and really understand on this much more visceral level of what that could feel like, literally, because I think it's something that we don't have this connection yet. So we talk really about science, but we don't really talk about what this means for human experience, especially on like why am I affected and what it means for me, especially living in Europe, or especially Central Europe, where it's not like the floods and floodings, etc. And so what I like to work with and experiment with is, how can you immerse yourself in a scenario that could be either the business as usual scenario of like we don't do much, and so basically change happens but it's too slow to avoid the big catastrophe, or on the other side we do implement changes, there is social action, it is being accelerated, and what does it mean then, and what kind of worlds can we imagine, what kind of scenarios can we work towards, and yeah, how would it again kind of like affect me on this most everyday mundane level. And so I mostly work with immersive experiences in a physical space, which becomes more difficult when when we gather remotely and when we can't go to this physical space. And I think in that situation where you cannot immerse yourselves personally, I think that stories are one of the most probably one of the most useful ways, or not just most useful, but like one of the possible ways of engaging with what that scenario could mean. So instead of experiencing that scenario, reading about it and then feeling yourself into it. Just this weekend, I was at a wonderful event. There was like a camp for experienced designers, and we had a story reading at a campfire. And I just realized again how beautiful it can be to just sit around a campfire with a bunch of other people and listen to a story, like a kid again, which is something that I haven't done in a very long time. though actually there's also a really great collection of short stories that I want to recommend. It's called Everything is Someone, by Simona Rabodengo and Joshua Noble, and they write really beautiful stories about non-living things and living things from their perspective. So it's also something that I thought about when Stëfan, when you were presenting, because there is the chair the factory that produced chairs, and how that factory had lived a life. There is a girl who wanted to see everything. There's also a story about a mountain that I haven't read so far, but just reading those stories, I found them very, very powerful to help empathize with non-humans.
Can you name them again?
Yeah, I'll share it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just like to quickly, just to develop on what Juli was saying. I think that this is really super important to talk about these things and like perhaps remind ourselves about them, about this potential of this experimental or even experience design, of transferring stories on a very personal level or within small communities, because it really, I think that it really can make a lot of very hard and complex and ungraspable seemingly issues becoming much more comprehensible. And I really have to say that only after rewatching both your workshops and trying to write a piece of text about it, it really, like, I really felt, that there is some change going on. Like, it kind of changed me. And I'm just using this in a very clumsy way now as a segue to a question that I wanted to ask both of you. And it's a very tricky question, I would say. It's something that we almost like need to justify ourselves as designers dealing with these like societal issues. So what do we change through our work? What do we really do? There is so much like negativity or bad reputation of, being a designer as being like importantly part of the problems that we are facing today, because a lot of the problems we have designed ourselves into in the world. So in a way, we have quite a tricky position. So if you would be willing to engage in this conversation, like what is being changed through your work? What do you feel yourself from your perspective that is being transformed or changed through these experiments that you do?
Stëfan, do you have a good answer to that?
I had something else that I forgot to answer to your question, but I will come back to this later. What will it change? Yeah, I think actually, no. What it's aiming for is that really, as I said, because it's so complex and such a multi-dimensional thing, that at least you try to, I don't know, tell in some way the story, or this in a narrative or in a storytelling way, hard data or facts. A quote that I also forgot to mention just was, facts don't convince, emotions do. So that's from the same interview that I mentioned earlier, from the Nature and Design collaboration. But I think, to me, it's like reached somewhat more emotional level. I think a few years ago, I would have never believed that I said this like this. But I think just to really, I don't want to say create awareness, but really get people moving from, if you relate to things, that with certain strategies, people, the position as a designer, everything that we design, it's not about objects, but the interactions that people do around objects. If you have a bus stop, then or a hospital, there's so many things designed that people react or interact between certain things, that it's not about objects themselves. And I think if it goes more to this, plus kill all fucking design egos, that I think this is the thing that should die. Yeah, design ego, the big one. And then you can say everyone is a designer, so everyone with two big egos should maybe also reconsider swallowing the ego.
It might have to do, have something to do with sort of the tradition of academia of keeping people in their positions for long term, and it might be quite hard to get, beyond your own horizons when you were in some spot teaching design in one way, or doing design research in one way, to switch, to adapt to the new social
Yeah,
conditions.
but I think, that's one thing, but I think this is everywhere. I mean, if you just now look at Corona crisis, how hard are we that we designed ourselves such a living that we find it so, I mean, at least here, I don't know, people find it so difficult to wear a mask in between. I almost had fights on the street because I was still wearing one biking and I got some shit, you know, just these comments that I think, dude, you just have to wear it. It's not even that the government here, it's not obliged to wear it, but the trust that people are, reasonable enough to do it. And now we are one of the worst countries, or the worst in Europe, I think, from what I read today, because you cannot change. So somehow there is somehow a total change of lifestyle.
I guess that's like the hardest part, right? That we need a broad behavioral change on the societal level.
Yeah.
It is obviously very hard and very sensitive thing to engage with.
Yeah.
What I also think about when you say, you know, like we designed ourselves into this, I think I have a perspective that is very heavily biased, that I was not really trained as a designer. I worked with startups, with tech startups. I worked with corporates on digital products for quite some time. And I have the feeling that as soon as you have a designer, actually you usually have a lot of like this holistic thinking about many different things, especially in my experience. A lot of things just are not designed purposefully. And I think that is more of an issue. It can also be very beautiful in certain ways, but then also has these risks. And yeah, for me personally, also like realizing all the stuff that we're designing, it's a very difficult challenge, also seeing how that world works and then turning more towards the arts, where you also like, well, there is very little funding on that side. So that's kind of also an issue that I think contributes to it. But I'm also thinking how you were talking about how do you get people to change, and what do we need for that? And I think that we always say, you know, if you, especially in the startup world, you would say, well, if you want a system to change, then you just make a better solution. And here it's just so much more difficult, just because it is not that one single solution, and because a lot of times it will not necessarily from the start be better for us, like wearing masks. Like, yeah, it's great for everyone else, but I myself, if for whatever reason, I may feel more restricted. And I think it's worth still listening to that, independent of what is the decision that we make after, but just listening to this. I think with systemic issues, be it Corona or climate change, there will just be so many different solutions that we will have to implement. That is, I think, more about the decision-making process. Like, I have to decide that this is the change that I want to make because I understand why, and I understand that it's important. And so this is the approach that I am working with now, experimenting, seeing if it works, to see if I can truly connect on this very visceral level of what does it mean for my livelihood? What does it mean for not even my kids? Because I think that is far away for a lot of us, or it's just even far away in time. So just what does it mean for me? And realizing that the bigger goals that a company may have, that it may not be worth it, or also realizing what risks it brings to the company if they don't change their behaviors to more sustainable ones. And this is where I would hope that just by getting people to connect on this very personal level, you can hopefully have stronger decisions that would then spark this kind of like chain reaction into larger organizations. Does it make any sense?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense, of course. It's also like, that's why I also really think that the work of both of you is so strong and powerful, because this change that we are talking about needs to happen. We need to have infrastructures that enable us to change ourselves, right? And these are political, legal infrastructures, much more complex than what we are engaging with on the everyday level. But at the same time, we can also accept the need for change on our levels. And I think that these events such as yours that are reminding us of various aspects of what is happening in the world and how can we look at it from different perspectives and engage with these very imaginative, creative ways is very empowering. But this is, then now I'm speaking from my perspective. But actually, I'm getting messages that we should slowly start wrapping up the official part. But I would really like to ask anyone from the audience if somebody has some question. Still, why we are still sort of, well, official.
I have in between one thing, because just when you also the narratives, and I just found the book now. There's an exhibition, you know, partly it's in The Hague and another half is in Amsterdam. It's based on a fair share of utopia, and it's based on an article from 2018 in the New York Times by Michelle Alexander. What if we are all coming back? And it's basically, it says now, don't believe in reincarnation, but what if everyone comes back? So how would you then, you can think about others, the next generation, but what if you are the one that comes back? What kind of world would you like to leave behind? Because you know you come back, and you can come back as anything. I mean, if you expand it now, imagine you're a mountain, or imagine you're an animal, imagine you are, it's then really based on facts like, what if you are one of the biggest, how do you say this, precarious or miserable livings are if you are non-white and you are not male. And so, you know, what if you come back like this? So you have to get into change several systems, and it's so complex. But I think this is a really beautiful idea to let people think about it as well, as though you don't believe it. But it's a really nice thought of experiment, I think. And it's artists and writers who did this. I can wait.
Have you heard of this short story, which is, by the way, a short story I just heard at the campfire this weekend? I think it's called The Egg at the End of the World, or The Egg of the World. And I found it really nice. It's about a person who just died, and they are being reincarnated. And then they realize that they are reincarnated as a future being, but also a past human being. And so basically that it is all us, everything that walks on earth or crawls on earth or whatever, and that harming others, you harm yourself. By doing good to others, you do good to yourself. And so I just had to think of this, and like, what if we extended this, like even this short story or this concept to other living, non-living things, to say that we reincarnate into all of those.
I don't know it.
Maybe Marketa, Blanca, what do you think? Let's use this as a closing mark. Yeah.
I just wanted to say last thing, and that's when you are talking about this reincarnation, imagine how would it be if all the political leaders and some presidents can reincarnate to become someone else, not white, not rich, not privileged, not men. It would change a lot. But yeah, we are kind of running behind the time, but we still have the time for the very popular Wach, Wine and Home, that Lenka created. A very genius idea, so we can still continue with less formal discussion. I think Michael will want to stop the stream, right?
Yes.
And we want to make it like really unofficial now.
Exactly.
But yeah, I should probably close it somehow in some more like sophisticated way. So thank you really very much everyone for coming and spending the time with the first UROBOROS Bits. And thank you, Stëfan and Juli, for preparing this great project and the installations as well. Thank you, Michal, for putting the installation up, especially in the times of having almost no staff because everyone is down with COVID. So yeah, fingers crossed that we will be able to visit the installations in DOX sometime soon.
Yes, and I want to say hello to my Zoom master, Jonas. So I hope he will be here with me next time, so I will not be like flying it all around, actually. And also, Stëfan, Julie, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the installation. I hope that somehow, magically, you will appear there at some point, actually. So yeah, so maybe like we will use some reincarnation, and just talking about change, it's very funny how like the spare change in United States sounds like. When you ask for a change, what does it really mean? You won't change on some small money. So, okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I'm thinking of turning off, and we still wait for the wine, yes? So, bye-bye, streamers. Bye-bye, streamers.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.